I accidentally said you have two big and juicy fruits. The alien princess was shocked. I'll never forget. The royal transport hummed softly as it descended through Lyra's pearlescent atmosphere, giving Ambassador Eli Chambers his first glimpse of the alien world. At 32, he was the youngest diplomat ever entrusted with such a critical mission, securing peace with the technologically advanced Lyrans after decades of interstellar tension. Remember, Ambassador, his aide Naomi whispered, the Lyran royal family values directness, but their cultural taboos are numerous. Eli nodded, adjusting his formal attire. 7 years of xenolinguistics at the academy. I've prepared for this my entire career. The transport landed with a gentle shudder and Eli stepped onto Lyran soil. The gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth's, giving each step a buoyant quality. 2 royal guards approached, tall, dignified figures with striking violet skin that seemed to shimmer with subtle iridescence in the golden light of Lyra's twin suns. Ambassador Chambers, one guard announced with perfect English pronunciation. Her Highness Princess Solara awaits you in the royal gardens. I am Thalix, captain of the royal guard. Eli followed Thalix through sweeping archways of living crystal, marveling at architecture that seemed to breathe with the planet itself. His heart raced. The Alliance had spent years attempting to arrange this meeting. The royal gardens sprawled before him, a wonderland of botanical impossibilities. Floating blossoms drifted through the air like luminous jellyfish. Trees with mirror-like leaves reflected the garden in countless fractured images. The scent was intoxicating, sweet and earthy with hints of something metallic. Ambassador Chambers, came a melodic voice. Eli turned and momentarily lost his diplomatic composure. Princess Solara stood before him, her tall, graceful form adorned in flowing garments that seemed woven from liquid starlight. Her skin was a deeper violet than her guards, with subtle markings along her temples that glowed faintly. Golden eyes regarded him with intelligent curiosity. Your Highness, Eli bowed deeply. I bring greetings from Earth and the Alliance of Free Worlds. Welcome to Lyra, she replied, her voice musical yet authoritative. We have prepared refreshments more suitable to human physiology than our standard fare. She gestured to an attendant who carried a tray of exotic fruits. Princess Solara herself held 2 luminescent orbs that pulsed with inner light. These are rare treasures from our royal orchards, she explained, holding them forward. They bloom once per decade. Eli, suddenly aware of every diplomat and guard watching his reaction, felt his throat tighten with nervousness. He wanted to compliment the fruits properly, to show appreciation for this rare honor. They're magnificent, he began. Such vibrant. His tongue stumbled over the formal Lyran phrase he'd rehearsed. Instead of saying exquisite botanical specimens, what emerged was a phrase that in Lyran culture had an entirely different connotation. You have 2 big and juicy fruits, he blurted out, using an idiom that in Lyran culture referred not to actual fruit, but to intimate anatomy. Silence fell instantly. The guard stiffened. An attendant dropped a crystal goblet that shattered with a musical tinkle. Princess Solara's golden eyes widened, her lips parting slightly in shock. For 3 excruciating seconds, Eli contemplated how quickly he could reach the transport and flee the planet. Then, unexpectedly, a faint purple blush spread across Princess Solara's cheeks. The corner of her mouth quirked upward and something like amusement flickered in her eyes. How refreshingly direct, Ambassador, she said finally, her voice containing a note he couldn't quite identify. Perhaps humans and Lyrans have more to learn about each other than I anticipated. Eli's face burned as the royal entourage processed through the gardens. He walked 3 paces behind Princess Solara as protocol dictated, giving him ample opportunity to contemplate the diplomatic incident he'd just created. Remarkable recovery, Naomi whispered, falling into step beside him, but I'd suggest avoiding fruit metaphors for the remainder of our stay. I confused the formal dialect with common Lyran, Eli muttered. 7 years of study and I make a mistake a first-year cadet would avoid. Ahead, Princess Solara conversed with her chief advisor, Mardex, a stern-looking Lyran, with elaborately patterned markings across his violet skin. The advisor kept glancing back at Eli with unmistakable disapproval. The tour continued through increasingly exotic sections of the gardens. Under different circumstances, Eli would have been entranced by the sentient vines that reached out to touch visitors with delicate tendrils, or the crystalline pools where aquatic plants performed synchronized movements like underwater ballets. Instead, he replayed his blunder endlessly, barely noticing when they arrived at the diplomatic quarters, a floating pavilion suspended above a grove of singing trees. Ambassador Chambers, Princess Solara addressed him as the group halted. "I trust these accommodations will be sufficient." "More than sufficient, Your Highness," Eli replied, careful to use the simplest, least ambiguous phrasing possible. "Thank you for your generosity." She studied him for a moment, her golden eyes unreadable. "The formal negotiations begin tomorrow at first light. However," she paused, "I would be honored if you would join me for a private dinner this evening." Marduk stepped forward. "Your Highness, the preparation for tomorrow's—" She silenced him with a subtle gesture. "I believe it would benefit our negotiations to discuss certain cultural expressions. To avoid further misunderstandings," Eli swallowed hard. "I would be honored, Your Highness." "Excellent." A hint of that earlier amusement flickered across her face. "An escort will arrive at dusk." As the royal party departed, Naomi turned to him with raised eyebrows. "A private dinner? That's either very good or very bad. Or she simply wants to laugh at my expense in a less public setting." Eli sighed, sinking onto a floating cushion that adjusted to his weight. "The High Council spent 3 years securing these talks," Naomi reminded him. "Try not to compliment any more of her anatomy tonight." The hours until dusk passed in agonizing slowness. Eli reviewed cultural protocols and rehearsed safe conversation topics. When the escort arrived, a different guard named Zyvex, Eli's nerves were strung tighter than quantum filament. The private dining area was an intimate pavilion nestled among bioluminescent trees. Princess Solara awaited him, her formal regalia replaced by simpler attire that somehow made her seem more regal, not less. "Ambassador?" she greeted him, gesturing to a cushion across from her. No other attendants were present, unusual for royalty. "Your Highness," he replied, bowing deeply before taking his seat. "I must apologize for my unfortunate choice of words earlier." To his surprise, Solara laughed, a sound like silver bells. "Is that why you've been looking so tormented? Please be at ease. I found it refreshing." "Refreshing?" Eli blinked. "Do you know how many diplomats have stood in that garden, reciting practiced phrases with no genuine reaction to our world?" She leaned forward. "You actually spoke without filtering every word through political calculation. That's one way to describe a cultural faux pas of galactic proportions," Eli said ruefully. Her golden eyes sparkled. "Tell me, on Earth, would my reaction be considered appropriate? I've studied human diplomatic protocols, but I find myself curious about how humans navigate such awkward moments." For the first time since landing on Lyra, Eli felt himself relax. "On Earth? You'd probably be within your rights to have me thrown out of the garden." She tilted her head. "And yet here we are, dining together." "Here we are," he agreed, suddenly very aware of how the ambient light played across her violet features. Evening revelations. The meal progressed through courses of increasingly exotic Lyran cuisine, each dish carefully adapted for human consumption. Eli found himself explaining Earth idioms while Princess Solara, who had insisted he call her Solara in this private setting, shared Lyran expressions. "So in your culture," she said, sampling a luminous nectar, "when someone lets the cat out of the bag, no actual feline is involved." Eli laughed. "Just as your expression dancing with 7 moons has nothing to do with actual celestial bodies. It refers to attempting the impossible," she explained, "though the literal translation sounds rather poetic in your language." A comfortable silence fell between them. Beyond the pavilion's open walls, the gardens had transformed with nightfall. Bioluminescent flora cast a soft, multicolored glow across the landscape, while distant floating lanterns drifted like earthbound stars. "May I show you something few off-worlders ever see?" Solara asked suddenly. "I'd be honored," Eli replied, surprising himself with how much he meant it. She led him along a winding path deeper into the gardens. Without the formal entourage, their conversation flowed more naturally. Eli found himself sharing stories about growing up in the rebuilt cities of post-war Earth, while Solara spoke of the isolation of royal life on Lyra. "My tutors taught me 17 languages and 32 schools of diplomatic theory," she confided, "but never how to simply talk with someone as an equal." Is that what we're doing? Eli asked. Talking as equals. She paused on the path, turning to face him. In the garden's ethereal light, her eyes seemed to hold galaxies. I would like to think so, Ambassador Eli. The way she said his name sent an unexpected warmth through him. Then perhaps you should just call me Eli, he suggested. Eli, she repeated, as though testing the sound. Come, we're nearly there. They emerged into a clearing dominated by what appeared to be ordinary, unremarkable bushes. Solara checked a device on her wrist. In exactly 47 seconds, she said, something remarkable will happen. As if on cue, the first bush trembled slightly. Then, in a synchronized wave, every plant in the clearing unfurled brilliant blossoms that emitted not just light but harmonic tones, a garden that sang as it bloomed. The night chorus, Solara whispered, as Eli stood transfixed. They bloom for exactly 12 minutes once per month when our moons align perfectly. Eli watched in wonder as colors shifted and melodies intertwined. Without thinking, he reached out, his hand finding hers in the darkness. She didn't pull away. On Earth, we have legends about flowers that bloom only under special circumstances, he said softly, but nothing like this. Every world has its unique wonders, she replied, her fingers gently entwining with his. That's why connection between our peoples matters so much. When she turned to look at him, something unspoken passed between them. Recognition of a bridge forming across the vast gulf of their different worlds. The negotiations tomorrow, Eli began hesitantly. We'll proceed as planned, she assured him, but perhaps with greater understanding on both sides. As the blossoms began to close, their song fading into the night, Solara kept her hand in his for a moment longer than necessary. There is an old Lyran belief, she said quietly, that those who witness the night chorus together share a bond that transcends ordinary connection. And do you believe that? Eli asked. Her smile contained mysteries he suddenly wanted very much to explore. I'm beginning to, she answered. As they walked back toward the palace, their conversation turned to the negotiations ahead, but something fundamental had shifted between them. A diplomatic mission now complicated by feelings neither had anticipated. The formal negotiations took place in Lyra's ancient council chamber, a vast hall where walls of living crystal shifted colors with the emotional tenor of discussions. For 3 days, Eli led the human delegation while Princess Solara represented Lyran interests. To outside observers, they were models of diplomatic professionalism, but each shared glance contained the memory of that night in the garden. The Alliance proposes joint administration of the Vega asteroid belt, Eli stated. Projecting 3-dimensional maps above the central table, shared mining operations would benefit both our peoples. Mardex, Solara's chief advisor, leaned forward with narrowed eyes. And who would oversee security in this arrangement? The same human military vessels that violated our boundaries at Proxima Centauri. The chamber's walls darkened to stormy indigo. Before Eli could respond, Solara intervened. Ambassador Chambers has already acknowledged that incident was based on navigational errors, Mardex. Her voice was firm but measured. We gain nothing by revisiting settled matters. The negotiations proceeded this way, moments of tension followed by careful compromise. During recesses, Eli and Solara found brief opportunities to speak privately. Your advisor seems determined to dislike me, Eli noted during one such moment. Solara sighed. Mardex represents the old guard. They remember the early encounters between our peoples, not our finest moments on either side. She hesitated. He's also concerned about other matters, such as? Her golden eyes met his. He believes I'm developing inappropriate feelings for an alien diplomat. Eli's heart quickened. And is he right? Before she could answer, they were called back to the chamber. That evening, a formal reception was held in the palace's grand atrium. Dignitaries from both delegations mingled beneath floating sculptures of light. Eli found himself constantly aware of Solara's location in the crowd, even as he conversed with Lyran ministers. Ambassador, came Mardex's voice from behind him. A word in private? The advisor led him to a secluded alcove overlooking the capital city's glittering expanse. You may have charmed the princess, Mardex said without preamble, but I see beyond your diplomatic facade. Whatever game you're playing will not succeed. I assure you my only purpose here is to forge a lasting peace, Eli replied evenly. Is that why you wander the night gardens with our heir? For peace? Mardex's markings pulsed with barely contained emotion. The royal bloodline has remained pure for 14 generations. It will not be compromised during my watch. Before Eli could respond, alarm klaxons shattered the evening's formality. Guards rushed through the atrium as guests looked around in confusion. Security breach in the royal laboratories, announced a voice over the communication system. All personnel to designated safe zones. Eli pushed past Mardex, scanning the crowd for Solara. He found her conferring urgently with security officials. Sabotage, she explained tersely when he reached her. Someone has compromised our atmospheric stabilizers. If they fail, this entire sector will be exposed to toxic upper atmosphere gases. Let me help, Eli offered immediately. This is an internal matter, began a security officer, but Solara cut him off. The ambassador has expertise in atmospheric systems, she decided.
He comes with us! They raced through crystalline corridors to a security transport.
Within minutes, they were descending into the heart of Lyra's environmental control center, a vast complex of humming machinery. Working together, they identified the sabotage points, explosive devices planted by a fringe separatist group opposed to any alliance with humans. As Eli disarmed the final device, his hand steady despite the countdown timer, Solara worked beside him reprogramming bypass protocols. 3 seconds to spare, she breathed when the timer froze. You've saved countless lives today. In the aftermath, as emergency teams secured the area, they found themselves alone in a monitoring station. Adrenaline still coursed through their systems. Your advisor was right about one thing, Eli said quietly. I do have feelings that go beyond diplomacy. Solara stepped closer, her violet skin luminous under the station's lights. As do I, is that so terrible? It complicates things, he admitted. Life without complications is hardly worth living, she whispered, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Under twin moons visible through the station's dome, their lips met, tentative at first, then with growing passion. 2 worlds colliding, differences melting away in the heat of their embrace. Transcending worlds. The peace accord between Earth and Lyra was signed on the 7th day of negotiations, the fastest resolution to an interplanetary treaty in Alliance history. As ceremonies concluded in the Great Hall, dignitaries from both worlds celebrated what many called the beginning of a new era. Yet for Eli and Solara, a more personal decision loomed. The council expects me to return tomorrow, Eli said as they stood on a private balcony overlooking the capital. My appointment here was always temporary. Solara's fingers tightened around the balcony's crystal railing. And what do you want beyond what duty expects? I want more time, he admitted. With you. With Lyra. Everything here feels like the beginning of something extraordinary, not an ending. She turned to him, determination in her golden eyes. Then stay. Become our permanent ambassador. That would require approval from both governments, Eli reminded her. I have some influence with mine. Solara smiled. And after your heroics at the environmental facility, even Mardex has grudgingly acknowledged your value. That night, in the royal residence chambers where Solara had invited him, all diplomatic pretenses fell away. Their bodies met in the soft luminescence of Lyra's bioluminescent decor, violet skin against tan, alien yet perfectly compatible. They explored each other with tender curiosity, discovering similarities and thrilling differences. What began as gentle exploration built to passionate intensity, their connection transcending physical boundaries as completely as they had transcended cultural ones. I never imagined this, Eli whispered against her neck, their bodies entwined in the aftermath of intimacy. Nor did I, she admitted, tracing patterns on his chest. But now I cannot imagine any other path. 3 cycles of Lyra's moons later, a joint announcement shocked both worlds. Princess Solara and Ambassador. Chambers would formalize their union in a ceremony combining Earth and Lyran traditions, the first interspecies royal bonding in known history. Opposition arose from conservative factions on both planets. Mardex resigned his position in protest. Earth politicians questioned Eli's loyalty. Yet for every voice of dissent, others spoke of hope and new possibilities. The bonding ceremony took place in the Garden of Night Chorus, carefully timed to coincide with the rare blooming. Representatives from 12 worlds attended, witnessing the beginning of something unprecedented. "Do you, Eli Chambers of Earth, bind your path to mine?" Solara asked, following ancient Lyran custom. "I do," he replied, his voice steady with certainty. "And do you, Princess Solara of Lyra, take me as your partner in all things as Earth tradition asks?" "I do," she answered, radiant in ceremonial attire that blended both cultures. As they sealed their vows with a kiss, the night chorus erupted around them, blooming earlier than astronomically predicted, a phenomenon the Lyran elders called a blessing from the cosmos itself. 1 year later, they stood together on that same balcony, watching ships from across the Alliance arrive for the first interspecies cultural summit. Solara's hand rested on her slightly rounded abdomen. Inside grew a child of two worlds, made possible by the finest medical science both planets could provide. "Your father's message arrived," Solara said, handing him a communication device. "He's finally agreed to visit for the birth." Eli smiled, remembering his father's initial shock at his son's choice of partner. "He'll love you, almost as much as I do. My daring human," she murmured, the pet name she'd given him after their first night together. "Do you ever regret that diplomatic slip that started everything?" Eli laughed, pulling her close as the setting suns bathed them in golden light. "It was the best mistake I ever made." Below them, the capital city pulsed with new energy. Human businesses alongside Lyran artisans, cultural exchange centers, and joint scientific facilities. What had begun with a linguistic error had transformed two civilizations. "Not a mistake," Solara corrected, leaning into his embrace. "The universe simply gave you the words you needed before you knew you needed them." As darkness fell, they remained entwined on the balcony, representatives of a future where differences became strengths and boundaries faded before understanding. Behind them, the night chorus began to sing once more, as if in celebration of barriers transcended and new worlds yet to be born.